Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
There are just 2 weeks remaining here in the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup Contender Series for drivers to secure themselves a top 15's championship standing to give themselves a chance of qualifying for the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup next year. Hello everybody, Paul Smith and Arjuna Kankapati here once again on commentary. And Arjuna, as I say, time is running out for a few of our drivers out there.
Absolutely. The clock is ticking away, and it's already kind of seen some drivers recognize that their chances of making it to the Super Cup next year have fallen by the wayside, and they're not here. It means a slightly smaller field, and so the fight for every single point, likely in many ways to be even more intense, Paul, as we head to a track that not only have the drivers had very little experience of, you and I have had very little experience of as well.
Yeah, we are racing around the virtual Sachsenring in Germany, and these drivers will be competing around 13 turns and 3.6 kilometers of undulating track here this week. Well, let's take a look at the format of how things happen here across the Porsche Heuer Esports Super Cup. It started off with the qualifying series earlier this summer, and the drivers competing in that had single races to decide who would be able to get through into the top 15 of the championship. Those top 15 then come into here, the Contender Series, where the bottom 15 of the this season's Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup compete against top 15 from this. The top 15 drivers of this championship get that qualifying chance to get into next year's Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup and to contend for that big cash prize. And of course, there are 5 drivers as well who were coming in through Porsche market slots on top of those 30 drivers that automatically qualified through that process. Points, well, this is all about, Arjun, you keep on saying it each week, this is all about getting drivers used to how the Super Cup works and prepare them for life in the Super Cup.
Absolutely. A qualifying series, quite simple in many ways. Qualify and race. Just grab your points in that main race. Here, you've got to get introduced to all those nuances that drivers have to think about. For example, qualifying on pole, finishing the sprint in first position, but then inverted back to 8th for the feature, and finishing there pays out less points than qualifying 8th, finishing 8th in the sprint race, and winning the feature race. So how do you adapt to these unique challenges, especially at these tracks that we've been going to for the most part, Paul, where, you know, they're tight, they're compact, and so passing opportunities have been few and far aplenty, and so, you know, it's been drivers having to get their elbows out for the most part, unless you qualify at the front, in which case, try and stay out of trouble and keep yourself inside of that front 8.
Yeah, you are going to see different style of racing if you've not seen one of these Contender Series races. After the points, of course, we'll look at the championship standings, and the top 10, you'd feel that those drivers are feeling quite smug and quite secure, especially those in the top 5 right now for their qualifying slot. Elvis ranking down there in 10th place. It's important to those drivers to finish in that top 10, but it's this section here, where you've got to be inside the cut zone, the top 15, and Dame Warren, Beckham Jasiah, also Julian Sonnen as well, looking over their shoulders at Oscar Pai, Marina Sarica, etc.
And I think this is an important race, right? We're heading into the unknown. Also on a day with the iRacing Petit Le Mans powered by VCO taking place. And so it's a big race for many of the drivers, but they've got to focus their attention on this race. They need to get the points. You can grab a maximum of 85 theoretically, but let's not talk about that maximum. We're talking about scraps, right? Staying inside of the top 10. If you can get 30, 40 points in this race, you'll feel very, very comfortable heading off into Spa, which, let's be honest, high speed, we know what we're in for when we head to the Ardennes.
It's drivers like Matti Sipilä who need a really, really big week to have a hope of taking it to the Ardennes Forests next week. I can't believe that this Contender Series is almost over. It's fast, it's frenetic, it's intense, and Beckham Jasiah, after missing that first week, didn't have the best of rounds at Okayama, but has turned things around in these last couple of weeks.
That's what he needed to do, right? Just put himself into the right positions at the right times. And at second place at Laguna Seca, in terms of points, right, very much has propelled him up the running order. And so that's very much something to keep in mind. You've got to also remember, right, he's got that pedigree of racing across so many disciplines of cars here on iRacing as well. So adapting to the challenge of this Porsche Cup car hasn't necessarily been too bad.
Yeah, and there's always got a well-kept bed as well. It must be said. Compliments to Beckham for that. Another driver that missed the first week of the championship is this driver, Oscar Pai. He's had a mixed bag of results, but finds himself not only well hydrated, but also finds himself just outside of that cut zone in 16th. Now, as we've been pointing out week on week, Arjuna, it's not the end of the world if you end up 16th or 17th. It's just that you're not guaranteed to have that qualification spot, are you?
What it means is you have to get to 8th in that first race, so you get inverted up to the front of the feature and just maximize the points that you can grab there. And so he's got the benefit of knowing that some of his teammates as well have secured themselves up towards the front, right? So they may not be as aggressive today. Once we get to the race, he may have the opportunity to make some moves a little bit easier. Going to be really interesting to keep an eye on that. And you called out Matti Sipilä, by the way. He sent me a message after last week's broadcast, Paul, calling me out for being a terrible commentator. No, he was pointing out a couple of things, including, you remember a couple of weeks ago, I said Matti was being a bit timid, to which he said, "You're right, I was being timid, but you know why? Because it was the first time I was, that week I'd been on track with cars around me." And so He said, exactly. Wow, indeed. He said his practice has been a little bit weird over the last couple of weeks. He's hoping to be dialed in a little bit more. Remember, he was in a real fight at Zolder last week. And then I said maybe didn't need to put himself in that situation. Well, that's what Pesca is all about, right? You're put into those situations. You have to deal with them as they come. Matti got the worst of that, unfortunately. What can he do now? Remember, he's 20th. He's got some work to do.
Either he's a very good mime artist, or he's very, very still.
Oh, his eyes.
Unbelievably still. Or we've lost the feed. One of the two from him there to give us that look of Matti. But as you've said, it's a track that a lot of these drivers will not know. Some of the drivers who have worked on and raced on other simulators may have had a bit more experience around this track. I've commentated one race around this track before on another simulator, so it is something that some of these drivers who are not solely iRacing people may have a little bit more experience over some others.
And as the drift games apparently start in qualifying, I didn't realize that Porsche sold the drift car as well. You're right, but I think I look through the list and I see mostly, let's be honest, especially in the last 5 years, most of these drivers have been firmly focused on iRacing. So I think what we're going to see is who has understood the nuances of the iRacing version the best, right? Of course,
yeah.
Every platform will have its own unique scans and whatnot, so where those bumps are and where they are not, maybe more importantly, I think that's going to be very interesting to see. I also wonder, Paul, with that pressure of the one-lap qualifying, which I've called out so many times this season. If you don't qualify, you know you're starting down in 20th, but if you're 2/10 off, you're probably still starting in 15th, so it's not much better. What are they going to do at this track? Where are track limits a concern for them, right? And if they've got to the end of this warm-up lap and they're not feeling so hot in terms of their tires, what will they do? Will they go back to pit lane and go once again?
Well, these are the questions that we ask. 29 drivers are out there on track right now, and a few of them are starting their hot laps. Oscar Pye being one of those drivers who is just starting a lap. So once you start your lap in qualifying here, that's it. You've got to finish that lap, and we're on board with Oscar Pye. Then he's come through turn 1, long sweeping turn 2, which then leads into a tightening turn number 3. And you've noticed it's pretty much up and down Dale here. Turn 4 and through this left, it's basically a triple apex, almost 4 apex left-hander here. Into 6 and 7. Downhill once again, and then you're going to keep it up to the right-hand side. And again, a feature of this track, it's medium to high-speed corners here, Arjuna, that these drivers are having to handle.
Absolutely, and so now just watch the precision that Oscar's going to be just trying to dial in now through these final couple of corners of the lap. There is some elevation change as well to speak of, but I think really just look at how open and wide the corner is. You're really just trying to hit the line at the end of the day. That didn't seem as though on the corner exit the car washed out in a natural way. The climb up though through turn 13, that's going to help you just try and get over to the left-hand side of the track, maximize the run on the right, and as Tristan Iglesias sets the benchmark, Oscar Pye, frustrated with himself. Did he invalidate it in the final corner?
I think he did. With the way he went over that curve, it looked like he got track limits there, and that is just how important it is to get absolutely spot on with your track limits here. Unbelievable stuff in the early going. Dane Warren and Daniel Pastor leading the way in qualifying with Tristan Iglesias and Xander Reed. Here's Rafael Silva. He's wanting to get something out of this round of the championship and just do anything he can, but you can see how much they are pushing those track limits on the exit, especially out of that last corner. 8th place for Silva.
Probably Zelensky is going to be quite frustrated with himself, I think, to be 9/10 off of his teammate on provisional pole. Not quite sure what's happened there. We sit on board with Beckham Jasir, though, as the lap begins, so watch how he's not overdriving the car right now. He's managing the tires. You don't want to overheat them at any point across this lap. I mean, I used to watch Top Gear, and what did Jeremy Clarkson used to say? A slow lap, at least visually, a calm lap is a good lap. And in this car in particular, I think that is so true. He looks so focused as well, Paul. Missing that first round of the season, the difficult start he then had after coming back into the running order, it's really pushed him, I think, to new heights. Let's see what he's got in that Williams Esports number 12.
See how much they're cutting the curbs there through 9 and 10. Carry the speed through 11, plunge downhill. You've got to be careful with your braking into 12. Again, it's a long, medium to high speed corner. And then onto the brakes. Uphill braking, so you can brake that a little bit deeper. Use the hill and gravity to your advantage. What can Beckham Jasir do? Across the line. Gets himself into only 11th. Moreno Sarica up there in 2nd place. Great qualifying.
And so the other Williams Esports car, the one that really delivers, right? So you know it's got potential, but Beckham's got some work to do. Will Chadwick's won a race this season. What's he going to do as he leans his way out of the final corner? You can see the gravel and grass on the right. That's what Oscar Pye must have run into to have invalidated his lap time. Mitchell de Jong goes to 2nd. Will Chadwick goes to 5th. We've got 3 drivers split by 71 thousandths of a second, and we're not done just yet.
Carlos Fenalosa, what can he do across the line here? And that lap time puts him into 7th place. Incredibly close between all the drivers. Florin Labigra, he'll be wanting a good result here this week just to secure himself a result, and that is not a good lap time. 21.8. That puts him all the way down in 24th.
He must have had a mistake somewhere. There's no way that Florian Lebigra has done that as his race, his natural pace, I should say. And we'll see him in the race probably be a bit quicker. But 6th in points, he's probably quite comfortable. This is really interesting, though, Paul, because you look at the margins through the field and you look at some of those drivers that have really got to deliver. Oscar Pai, that one that we called out at the start, right? And the one that we saw invalidate the lap. Imagine the pressure on his shoulders compared to Moreno Sarica, 17th coming into this race and 2nd in qualifying.
Yeah, great result. Well, 3rd in the end because Mitchell de Jong was able to sneak a time in there into the top 3. 4 drivers, Simone Maria Marchena, Luis Belique, Oscar Pai, and Andrew Caron has all not set a lap time here. The rest of the field, well, they're just covered by, I'll be able to tell you, they're all covered by 1.9 seconds. The outlier on the lap times is Chunye Zhang, down there on the 1:22.6. But Dane Warren, once again, pole position, 2 weeks in a row for him to be on pole position. I think he'll be hoping for a better run of it than at Zolder last week.
It wasn't terrible, though, I guess, at Zolder, right? 2nd in the sprint race, and what was it? Still a 10th place in the main race, so it could have been worse, but like you say, that 2nd race, he had the spin. He would be slightly less than pleased with how that went. The other thing to keep in mind, Paul, penalty points. Race control's been busy, I think that's one way of saying it, over the course of the season. And Dane Warren's had 26 penalty points over the course of the season. Without those penalty points, he's up inside of the top 10. He needs to make sure he stays out of trouble, especially knowing he can't afford more penalty points. There's also not much time left in the rest of the season to get more points onto the board.
Yeah, keep your nose squeaky clean, and, well, you'll be able to help yourself in a championship like this. But when it's incredibly close and the times and the margins between drivers are so small, that's easier said than done, is that. But with that said, let us take you to your starting grid then. So on pole position, 2 weeks in a row, Dane Warren. Alongside him on the front row is Mitchell de Jong. Then it's Moreno Sarica, great qualifying for him. Finds himself on row number 2 alongside Julian Sonnen. Those two, they need a good week here this week. Will Chadwick and Daniel Pastor then on the 3rd row of the grid. Row number 4 for Carlos Fenolosa and Josh Rogers, with Tristan Iglesias and Sander Reed on the 5th row of the grid. Elvis Rankin and Elliot Veyron round out row number 6. 7th row of the grid is shared by Michael Janney and Beckham Jasiah. Bryn Collins, he needs a big week here if he wants any hopes of getting into that top 15. Alongside him is Nicolas Matteo, who's shown glimpses here of what he can do. Pascal Costa and Daniel Savini round out row number 9. With the 10th row of the grid shared by Rafael Silva and Matti Sipila. Roger Christensen and Leo Gariboli then share row 11. With the 12th row of Bobby Zelensky and Florian Lebigra. Watch for those two from the back coming through. Chunye Zhang is the last driver to set a lap time, and as I said, Simone Maria Marchena, Luis Belique, Oscar Pai, and all on his own on row number 15, Andrew Caron. So then, drivers getting themselves set for the start of this race. It's going to be a tricky first corner as well. It's a deceptively tight corner, is that. That could have some key factors into this one. But as the drivers get about 10 seconds left to get themselves prepared, they'll start going through their quick routines, make sure that they're prepared. The conditions are pretty much ideal out there, mostly cloudy, 23 degrees track temperature. They'll be loving life out there. But 10 laps are ahead of us here at the Sachsenring for week number 5 of the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup Contender Series. It's a great launch from Dane Warren on pole position, but look behind, the fight for 3rd place. That's going to be Moreno Sarica holding on to that. They're 4 wide into turn number 1. Can they all sort themselves out and keep it nice and clean? The answer answer so far is yes, but with the twisting nature of this track, you're going to see these drivers still side by side. A little bit of issues further back for Roger Christensen, and that's Florian Lebigra dropping all the way to the back of the field. Still 2-3 wide through the left-hander. Oh my goodness, talk about trying to take advantage there, Arjuna.
Absolutely. Interesting start there, but you could tell that Moreno Sorica did not want to get bullied, and important for him that he did not do so. Oh, his teammate Daniel Pastor hard into the wall, and that's a Williams Esports car dropping straight back to pit lane.
Oh, that's huge for Pastor. Massive, massive incident. Remember, came into this round in 12th place. So that's the last thing he would have wanted, to have those issues on the opening lap here. But it's Warren from De Jong, Sorica and Chadwick's in 4th place, who's got ahead of Julian Sonnen then, who's down to 5th. Josh Rogers moving forward into 6th place ahead of Carlos Fenolosa and Tristan Iglesias. We've got a car spun, that's Costa, who spun at the last corner, and still we're carrying on with these battles. One thing you can say about the Sachsenring is lap 1 into lap 2 is intense.
I guess still getting those tyres up to temperature as well initially. That's what really kind of sets it off as Beckham Jasir tries to avoid losing out to Nicolas Matteo, slots back into line eventually. I think now that we're up to speed, though, we'll have to see who's going to be really aggressive. A big lunge from Michael Johnny, Xander Reed, Elliot Veyron all battling there to try and get up to the side of Nicolas Matteo. But I think 10-lap race, Paul, this is going to be crazy. I wouldn't be shocked if we see drivers getting close to that incident limit.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I am expecting to see 1 or 2 ending up having to take a drive-through down pit road, especially after the physicality of these opening lap and a half here. As we go on to see, here's what happened to, oh dear, that looked like a big hip check, and how lucky were the drivers coming through then. He bounced back onto track nicely into a hole. That's what happened to Pascal Costa. Got sandwiched between 2 cars, and Costa ends up further down the field once again in 28th place. But Pastor, that was a huge, huge incident.
Absolutely, and so now on to this next lap with this fight for 8th, the one I think to watch, because again it's about that invert where drivers are thinking 50 points in that feature race. Beckham Jasir wants to get in front of Tristan Iglesias, who's maybe protecting Elvis Rankin slightly, goes deep through the corner. Here comes a switch back from Jasir, but this is the second lap that he's been trying to get around the outside down through those opening couple of corners. It doesn't work again, and as he runs into the rear bumper of the car in front of him, he gets run into as well. We watch the replay as Savini gets a windshield full of Daniel Pastor bouncing back onto track. Oh, how did he not make contact there?
There's a change of underpants on order for Daniel Savini after that one. My goodness, that would have been a jump scare and a half for him. But yeah, you're absolutely right that Iglesias seems to be trying to hold up Beckham Jasir here to help his teammate of Elvis Rankin. Rankin needs a decent score. Of course, Rankin missed last week. He's comfortable, but it's not a comfortable enough position to be in right now. But Iglesias already has dropped off about 1.5 seconds off of his teammate here. And if he is doing that rear gunner job, he's doing a perfect job at it.
Yep, and now you can see the struggles from Iglesias. It's going to force Beckham Jasir to go the long way around. I'm uncomfortable. I am very, very uncomfortable right now. If I'm Nicolas Matteo, sit to the inside, try and hold on. Beckham Jasir is going to really try and force the issue here, though, Paul, because that margin in front's grown so much that if he doesn't make the move now, as time ticks away, he's not going to get a chance to fight up to the back of Elvis Rankin and get into 8th position. So that urgency is going to come, and I can tell you, Matti Sieppela and Leo Gariboli, there's been a couple of cars off the track further behind. It's all sorts of crazy here today.
Yeah, it's a big day. Matti Sieppela has a mechanical meatball warning flag, so he's had issues out there, and just goes from bad to worse for Matti as we go through. High-speed stuff, get the car slowed down then, and then through the land. Here's what happened to Sieppela, and it's just tag, and then he gets a knock on the rear, and that's what suspension out the way. And De Jong and Sorica, what's happened to Warren out there?
Surely not another. I mean, look how wide he's gone. Something has happened to Dane Warren. I hate to say it, but something's gone mentally or something. And second race in a row, what's happened? Running up front. Slow down.
Slow down.
And it wasn't a slowdown last week at Zolder as well?
Yeah, it was. Absolutely,
it was either that or bouncing over the chicane. I forget off the top of my head, Paul. I apologize for that.
It's been an intense season. It's hard to remember everything that's gone on throughout this season. But yeah, Warren picking up a slowdown penalty. We saw how much the drivers were cutting over the apex curve of turn 9 and 10. And I wonder if he's just clipped that a bit too much and then has to serve that slowdown penalty after turn 11 off the line. But what that does do, it promotes Moreno Sarica up into second place, and that driver for Williams Esports 17th on the outside looking in right now. This is a big day for him, and he's working for him so far.
So I'm right now going back in time to try and figure out what happened a week ago. It was a mistake over the chicane. It wasn't a slowdown. Warren just bounced himself over the curb and let Josh Rogers take the lead. So again, a second consecutive week, Paul, knowing that Dane Warren needs the point, where he, in control of the race, has made a mistake. So again, it just goes to that mindset, right? What's going through his head right now? We know Dane is so quick. We know he's so capable. It's clear he just needs maybe a mental calm down, right? Someone to tell him, Dane, you're good. Don't worry about it. You can afford to take a 10th here and there. Maybe he's pushing just a little bit too much in the search of that extra 10th or so.
I just feel with Dane, though, he's maybe putting a little bit of pressure on himself, as you say there. I mean, even so, a third place here in the sprint race, it's not the end of the world in terms of points compared to those that are around him. Okay, one of those drivers that is around him is Moreno Sarica, who's directly in front of him, but he's not actually outscoring him by that much, by Sarica being in front by 1 place. So it's not the end of the world if you're Dane Warren. If you're these drivers behind Will Chadwick, though, you've got both Julian Sonnen and Josh Rogers. Rogers doesn't need the points right now. In fact, I think he'd be quite comfortable in 6th place. Whereas Julian Sonnen, again, 13th place coming into this week, he needs those points.
And if it is, go back a bit more in that line, right? Fenalosa, Rankin, they're also somewhat comfortable, I would say, in the top 10. So, yeah, it goes back to what we said at the start. This has been a championship where the front 8's been somewhat calm after the first couple of laps. The rest of the pack's where the action has been, and seems to be that way once more, as De Jong now 1 full second clear as we continue to tick away those laps. We look on board with Julian Sonnen, who, as mentioned, has some work to do. Both of the races last week, Paul, finished outside of the top 20. Only twice this season has he cracked the top 10, and we know how important consistency can be. I don't think Elliot Veyron's had a very consistent run down through turn 1.
Neither's Matteo as well. I think there's been issues for those two in turn 1, and well, they're going to carry that one on of Veyron and Matteo, and behind them Savini is there going, excuse me, can I just get by? Thank you. He's stuck right now, and he's got a hard charging Bryn Collins behind him as Savini. Bryn is another one of those drivers who he needs to pull something out here to keep his hopes alive of getting into that top 15. But the drivers in front are battling so intense that that's easier said than done to move forward. Here is Bryn.
And Bryn's another driver, by the way, without penalty points. He's inside of the cut line. He cannot afford another mistake that sees him involved in a steward inquiry, whether it's his mistake or someone else's. That's just the way this series works. He almost gets checked up behind Savini on the run up to the final corner. And it slightly compromises his line now. He's not going to get a chance down to turn 1 to make a move. If anything, look behind. Here comes the charge, the challenge from Rafael Silva. And that bright red, number 78. But into the braking zone of turn 1, Collins holds the middle and holds his spot for the time being.
Yeah, for now, indeed. But it's a tricky track. It's a track that can produce some great racing as well, and we've been seeing that so far. Oh, contact! That was big contact for Zelensky. Then into the back of Silva, and that drops him down a place now behind Marchena. So up a place for the Grand Go driver of Simone Maria Marcheno and Bobby Zelensky, who I think he'll be quite satisfied with me saying this, has had an absolute nightmare Contender Series.
No, I think he will have no problems with you saying that, especially given that, once again, balancing it with a run to the Final Four in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. And I think most of the rest of the Porsche Esports Supercup grid were watching and probably cheering him on as he gave the shot to the bumper of Parker White into the final corner. The bump and run didn't work. Parker White held on, and we'll see Parker, of course, in the 2025 Super Cup still, so that's going to be really exciting to see. Unfortunate for Bobby that it does seem as though he's going to have to go back to the qualifying series for next year if he wants to fight his way into the Super Cup for 2026. But the thing that we know about Bobby, he is so adaptable, he is so versatile, he can drive any car quickly. Still quite remarkable, Paul, that it took until this year for him to get his first ever Porsche Esports Super Cup podium. Yeah,
that was incredible that it took that long. We've had drama further down. It's Florian Lebigra's dropping down the order again, so that's another drama for the Team Redline driver. I know Team Redline very busy at the moment in the iRacing Petit Le Mans, but they'll be keeping one eye on this, and it's just gone from bad to worse for Florian out there. He's down in 26th right now. Oh dear, I think it's another one of those days to forget.
And I mean, no points for him either, right, in this race. He would get points if he finished 25th in the feature, but only 20th in the sprint gets points. And so very, very important for him as you take a look at the cut line, how things stand right now. I can just see her hold on to 15th as this would hold. Sarika jumps to 14th. Here's a look at what happened into turn 1. Is it self-inflicted? Oh, yes, he gets a little tag from behind, but no, he lost the rear end by himself there, I'd argue.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree with you there. Oscar Pye dropping a place, but Daniel Pastor is the big loser in those live points as things stand right now, and he's going to have to start that main feature race from all the way at the back of the grid. So goes to show how things can turn around in just a blink of an eye. As we stand right now, it is the final lap. The leader's going through to about halfway through the lap here, and chances are less and less. Fenalosa 7th. He's got Elvis ranking behind. Elvis will be wanting to move forward, or will he? He's in that transfer spot to get into pole position for the feature race. We know that Elvis is quick as well. Don't forget, getting a win on the Algarve in the main race and the sprint race win at Okayama in those atrocious conditions. So we know he's got it in him, Elvis.
And he missed last week. He was racing off in the FIA F4 Esports Global Championship. So I think he needs some points on the board, Paul. He'll be very happy to start from pole as we get ready to go for the feature race.
Absolutely. Mitchell de Jong through the final corner. What now, for the first time in the Contender Series, a race winner here in the sprint race. De Jong across the line. He takes the win by 1.2 seconds over Marina Sarika. Great result for the Williams Esports driver. In 8th place, Elvis Rankin does hold on to that place then, and he gets that pole position for the main feature race. But there's been some drama. Pascal Costa and Florian Lebigra on that last lap have got black flags. We wondered if drivers would end up with incident point penalties, and well, that has happened on that last lap. And we've got a race that's twice as long coming up for you shortly in the next 5 minutes or so. But here are your provisional race results then from the sprint race. It is Mitchell de Jong who wins that one by 1.2 ahead of Marina Sarika, with Dane Warren, pole sitter, in 3rd place. Will Chadwick is able to move up a place into 4th ahead of Julian Cernan and Josh Rogers. Carlos Fenalosa and Elvis Rankin 7th and 8th places. Tristan Iglesias was able to pull away from Beckham Jasiah to finish 9th, Jasiah in 10th place. 11th for Xander Reed and Michael Jarnett moving through the field, with Matteo and Veyron 13th and 14th. Savini 15th ahead of the charging Bryn Collins is 16th. Rafael Silva, Simone Maria Marcheno, Bobby Zelensky and Oscar Pye, the last of the point scorers. Then it's Luis Belique and Leo Gariboli, with Andrew Caron then in 23rd. Roger Christensen and Pascal Costa ahead of Florian Lebigra. Chunye Zhang is the last of the runners, and then Matti Sipila and Daniel Pastor are the two drivers not to finish that race. So that is the sprint race. We've got the main race coming up for you shortly, 20 laps instead of 10, an inverted grid, and possibly the best result really for Elvis Rankin.
Absolutely. I think he just wants to sit up front, try and control and grab yet another win, and very much head into that final round at Spa with some confidence, knowing that he doesn't have to get involved in the points talk. Instead, he can just focus on running his race and maybe trying to win again, because I think that's one thing, Paul, that we have to focus on, right? This Contender Series has been quite short and brief, right? After this, there's what, 6 weeks until the end of the year, and once we turn that page into 2025, schedule for the Super Cup hasn't quite been announced yet, but you have to assume, based on the previous years, it's not far from us kicking off another season. So drivers are already thinking about the Super Cup, already thinking about their preparation, maybe thinking a little bit about their Christmas holidays as well.
Please don't mention Christmas to me. I've not even thought about it. We're not in for Halloween yet, but we are in the scary season, and it was scary for Daniel Pastor out there. Big incident that if it had been just half a second later, his car bouncing across, that would have wiped out half of the grid. But fortunately, found it the only gap out there. But Pastor, the big loser out of that, with the live points showing that he's outside the top 15 now.
How racing goes, though, right? Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and you lose big. And he's going to have to fight. It's going to be interesting knowing what we saw in that first lap, right? The amount of side-by-side. 3 and 4 wide on occasion as well. So can he stay out of trouble? Does he want to try and stay out of trouble? Is he the one that wants to be aggressive? We'll take a look at some of the moments of the race. That, a hellacious lick into the wall, and then look at the super slow-mo. Daniel Savini just about avoids it.
Yeah, like I say, he found the only slot there to be able to bounce through. Incredibly lucky. If not, that would have wiped out the back half of the grid there. And yeah, that was a huge, huge incident. A little bit of a hip check. And that was all it took to send his car flying off the track there. But we've seen here how the racing is. It's intense, it's close, it's frenetic. And those opening laps especially, you can make some big gains, but you can also lose some positions at that. Josh Rogers made up 2 places just in one move by taking advantage of others battling away. And that's something you need to be able to be capable of when you go into the full Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup.
Think about the years that Rogers has had, right? He's won 2 championships, yes, but there was that one year where Sebastian Joe, Max Benneker, and Josh Rogers all in contention, but Max Benneker and Josh Rogers just couldn't not find each other on the racetrack. They just seemed to tangle more than they didn't tangle. Outside of that, Rogers has shown why his racecraft has led him to those 2 championships, right? Qualifies well, makes those moves when he needs to, but also is willing to be aggressive when he needs to as well. He's no longer in Australia, doesn't have the benefit of netcode to help him anymore, Paul, but we know just how feisty he can be.
Yeah, absolutely. He's one of those drivers who, if you give him half a chance, he will take it. That is for sure, and he's been showing that championship quality throughout this season. Okay, Okayama was a bit of a damp squib for him, along with a few other drivers. Very damp indeed for a few other drivers. But I'm looking further down, coming into to this week. There's some big results happened in that sprint race, and I'm thinking mainly Marino Sirica. He wants to now turn that around and get another big result, another huge haul of points to get him firmly into that top 15, if not maybe sneaking into 11th or 12th place.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to point out, by the way, you called out that Rogers struggled a bit at Okayama. Have we found a potential weak spot for Josh? I also remember him being a little bit in the struggle bus at the iRacing Sebring 12. Could rain be the one weakness that Josh Rogers has? Well,
if we've found it, then we've found his kryptonite. It's Elvis Rankin and Carlos Fenalosa leading off the front row of the grid, with Josh Rogers and Julian Sonin on row number 2. Row 3, William Chadwick and Dane Warren. It's the fourth row for the front two from the sprint race, Marina Sarika and Mitchell de Jong. The rest of the drivers starting where they finished. So Tristan Iglesias and Beckham Josiah, they continue their battle that we saw throughout that first race. Sander Reed and Michael Jarney then on row number 6. Seventh row of the grid for Nicholas Matteo and Elliot Veyron, with Daniel Savini, Bryn Collins sharing that 8th row. The 9th row of Rafael Silva and Simone Maria Marchena. Row number 20 for Bobby Zelensky and Oscar Pai. I will be wanting a good second race here. Luis Belique, Leo Gariboli, then on the 11th row with Andrew Caron and Roger Christensen on row number 12. The 13th row of Chunye Zhang, and then after their black flag penalties in the last lap of that race, Pascal Costa and Florian Lebigra starting in 26th, 27th. Matti Sipola alongside them, and Daniel Pastor, big race for him. What can he do from 29th? I tell you what, if he gets up into the top 15, that has been a mega drive here.
And similarly, I think, Matti Sipola, who also had his own struggles in race 1, he's got to fight his way forward as well. So, Paul, there's 3 races left to go. There's what? 135 potential points up for play and 15 spots in the Super Cup. I'm tense. I've been tense all season. I'm as tense as I've ever been.
Wow. Let's see what these drivers, these excellent drivers, can do out there on track. The clock strikes down. We're getting ready for the start of the main race here for week number 5 of the Contender Series. Green flag in the air, we're underway, and it's a great launch from Elvis Rankin. Josh Rogers is trying to follow him through into turn number 1, onto the brakes. The driver's fanning out further back. There's contact between Fenalosa and Rogers. That drops Rogers down. We've got contact further down for Christensen, and one of the Apex Racing Academy cars involved in that one. But we go through turns 2 and 3, and we're still 2-3 wide. There's puffs of tyre smoke happening mid-corner, and big contact. Oh, that's huge for Bryn Collins. He's got involved in another incident, and he falls all the way down to the back.
And again, even if it's not his fault, that's not what he wanted to be involved in. Did not want points taken away from him. Same incident, almost a mirror repeat of what we saw in the sprint, hard off into the wall. I mean, this has been absolutely crazy. Daniel Savini avoided it the last time. He's involved this time around. Another driver stricken in the middle of the track. I think that's Nicholas Matteo. Paul, they saw drivers get into the incident limit in the first race. Apparently drivers thought, let's do it even quicker this time around.
Yeah, the gloves are off, that is for sure. And they're all duking it out here. It's a bare knuckle boxing fight outside of the pub car park on a Saturday evening. And these drivers are holding no prisoner, and off to the right there. Rafael Silva going into the wall, the latest victim of this opening lap. I think we're going to have some busy race stewards post-event of this one, and that could really have a big say into the championship points going into the final week.
I can't wait to see this penalty report after the race, that's for sure. I said race control's been busy. Let's just add to their palaver, shall we? Can you imagine if this is the opening round of the 2025 Porsche Esports Supercup? If you're listening, Porsche, yes, please. We had Daytona this year for the very first time. That was crazy. This would be even crazier. You can see on the left side of the screen, at least momentarily, the movers and shakers. Florian Lebigra, plus 11. Daniel Pastor, also plus 11 so far.
I said, didn't I? Right before we started, if he gets into the top 15, it's been a heck of a drive. Well, that, from both Pastor and from Lebigra, is one heck of an opening lap right there. The biggest movers through the field. Oscar Pai up into 11th place, plus 9 places for him. So definitely drivers on the move, taking advantage of those issues out there. There you see the live championship points as things stand. The top 10, Dane Warren moving up into that top 10 right now. Lebigra down to 9th, but he's got enough of a points advantage. I think he's is in a solid place right now in that top 10. It's this page here, and you look at it, Sarika's up to 13th, Oscar Pai right there on the bubble, 16th, just behind back of Josiah. In fact, there's quite a bit of a margin between Pi and Josiah coming out those points.
I thought for a second we were just about to see another accident there, by the way. The margin that some of these drivers are leaving a little bit too fine for my comfort. 20 points is not an insignificant buffer at the end of the day. 85 is the maximum that you can get from any particular race. 50 is the most you can get for winning the feature race. It's not insurmountable, but it's a tall order for the likes of Pi and Pastor. And so now if you are in that Williams Esports 95 poll, the question that you will surely be thinking, right, I've got myself into the top 20, can I get myself into the top 10? Because that would mean I'm only about 10 points back, a lot more of a palatable situation to think about.
Bobby Zelensky and Michael Jarny making moves. Oh, it was Bobby Zelensky, yes. So Jarny moving up ahead of Zelensky. I think Bobby is rather resigned to not being into a chance of a qualification. That's what happened to Christensen at turn number 1 at the start of the race. This is Bryn Collins getting turned across the nose of one of his teammates there. So that's what happened to Bryn Collins. You see it's 3 into 1, just do not go. And it's Collins who gets spat out to the side of the track. Nicholas Mateo, another one who got caught out. That was Will Chadwick, was involved in issues there as well. Here's a look from Mateo's, and it was Chadwick into the side of a Coanda car that then kicked off the chain reaction.
Absolutely, and then out of the final corner, well, Rafael Silva was already pretty much 4 wheels off the track at that point and was slip and sliding his way, even before the hip shove from one of the Coanda drivers really just put the nail in the coffin for him, spins it around, avoids losing too much more time, but the damage well and truly done. So it's Coanda, what, 1 through 4 right now. And this is what we were saying in that warm-up, right, for Elvis Rankin, exactly what he wanted after missing last week's race. A disappointing round at Laguna Seca as well, where failed to get in a proper benchmark of a qualifying lap time. Bouncing back, running up front, and leading the purple and orange train here at the... Okay, I'm going to say it right. I've got it in my head now. Sachsenring. No, I got it wrong. Sachsenring. There we go.
Like a Z. Yeah.
There you go. See, I got it in my head, Paul. I was so confident until I wasn't.
Now you know how I feel most weeks. Oh, William Chadwick running wide there. Must have damage from that instant at lap 1. And that's allowed Elliot Veyron to go through. Oscar Pi behind now. If you're William Chadwick, you're quite comfortable in the points. A little contact between him and Pi. Oh, even more of a hit check there. Pi's got to be careful. He's on the outside looking in right now. Cut back, cut under for Pi. He could possibly do it, but no. Chadwick just holds on to it with the pace around the outside. But Oscar and Michael Jarny behind are both showing their intentions here. And there's a little bit of a train because Zelensky, Marcheno and Labigra and the rest of them. I'll tell you what, looking back from Will Chadwick's car, I'm surprised he hasn't got a caravan on the back of his car because he's got a huge queue of traffic.
We're at that point of the season as well, right, where you either kind of know that you're feeling good, you're in the top 15, or you're on the bubble and you've got to throw some desperate moves. And so on both sides of the equation, there's less to lose in many ways, right? Because if you're in that top 15, you're now fighting with people that you may be racing next year in the Super Cup. And as much as maybe people don't want to believe that there's mental games being played, you better believe that every little thing that goes out on track plays into the mindset of drivers next year. So, for example, Oscar Pi behind Will Chadwick. If Will Chadwick just lets him go into turn 1, for example, if that happens into the Super Cup next year, Oscar Pi is going to be thinking about that. Will Chadwick will be thinking about that as well. So all those little things they'll be trying to battle about. And so as one of the Apex Racing Academy cars comes under pressure, Leo Gariboli's teammate Luis Belique trying to battle as we jump on board with Mitchell de Jong.
Yeah, de Jong way down the order from where he started, down 11 places. I think he was the car that got caught up with Will Chadwick on that opening lap. Drops down the order and he's just trying to work his way forward again, is Mitchell. But yeah, it's mind game. A lot of people don't realize that sim racers, they have a long memory. Trust me. And through a season, you make a mental note as to who you can race with, who you can't race with. and then basically you know, right, who are the ones that I've got to give that little bit of extra space to, as down the inside goes the 95, and Daniel Pashtor now up 12 places in this race.
Picking them up one by one, that's all you can do at this stage of the day. And look at the 2x2 down to the opening corner, which is so fascinating as well. The way I did some laps here, and that camber really makes it difficult at turn one, and a great description of that is straight across the track initially, locking up the front brakes, and then eventually tucking back into line. Suboptimal, I think that's how you say it. And Daniel Pastor's now got to find his way past 2 more cars.
Yeah, that's 2 places lost in just one little mistake there, a little lock-up. Remember, for those of you who've not been watching all the way through the season, I mean, where have you been if you've not been watching? But these cars, no ABS, no traction control, so these drivers don't have any driver aids. You've got a lot of horsepower under the control of your right boot, and these drivers are doing the best that they can to hold on to it. And of course, it's not the most aerodynamically, most effect aerodynamically that a car can have, but as you bleed off the speed, you do lose that downforce, and it becomes more of a mechanical grip thing, and that's when you start locking tires.
And there's limited downforce, so you've got to make advantage. You take advantage of every little bit of it that you get at the end of the day, and so yeah, this is a fascinating balance to really strike. And now, I think late in the race as well, getting to that same stage that we would have been at the end of the sprint race, where maybe tires are starting to wear a little bit more, how much do you still have beneath you to be able to push? Clearly, Mitchell de Jong's got plenty, because he's made the move on the number 17 rather easily and grabbed 17th position for himself. Now got to try and close what's almost a 1.5 second gap up to Florian Lebiger as he goes out wide, just arcs the corner, gets the power down very, very nicely. I mean, it just goes to show, Paul, after really showing us his strength in that first race, de Jong caught up in the chaos of the start, having to fight his way through the mid-pack here in the feature.
Yeah, it just goes to show, you know, even if you are starting in 8th place, that just gives you the opportunity of being involved in somebody else's accident. And so it can easily turn things here in the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup Contender Series. Pleasure to have you all along here. Paul Smith, Arjuna Kankapati on the commentary here, bringing you all of the action right across the iRacing Esports network of channels, across the Porsche Twitch, Racebot TV's channels as well. And Daniel Pashtor now trying to move forward here, that you're looking at right now. Ahead of him is Belike. And Luis will not want to move over for him. He will not want to lose it, but Pashtor knows he has to make those moves. But no move being made. And Matti Sipula now behind Pashtor. It's starting to get a little bit antsy.
I think these are drivers as well that, let's be honest, not been an easy day. And so they recognize 10 laps left to go or so for them to try and get some sort of a result from this. Because you don't want to go off into that final round with all the work to do, and Sipala included. Spa is a tricky place to go, and it's an updated version of Spa as well, right? So as much as the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup has visited the Ardennes plenty of times, never visited with this particular version on iRacing. So wonder if there's been any weird, small little changes, I should say, that maybe have influenced some weird setup things that teams have found out. Find out in a week's time. One thing that we know, if they're playing qualifying games here today at this short of a track, imagine how important those games will be at a track that is almost 7 kilometers long.
Yeah, that is going to have a huge effect, as Belike seeing Daniel Pashtor getting really close to the rear bumper of his Porsche 911 GT3 Cup car. At that final corner, important to carry the speed at that last corner up the hill and across the start and finish line. And then onto the brakes. Downhill braking into turn 1. We've seen how easy it is to lock a brake, and Belike just running that bit deep into 1. That's allowed Pashtor around the outside of 2. That gives you the inside for 3, and contact between the two of them. Belike's off, and Pashtor carries on. And Belike losing a number of positions through all of that. But one little mistake, and well, there you go. You drop down the order.
And you can see on his face there was a brief look of frustration and then the resignation that in a series like this often comes with it, right? You've had an incident, right? You can't dwell on it. You've got to just get back to the task at hand and fighting, let's not forget, to grab some points here or there. Top 25, leave this race with a point, at least. And so that's what he will be thinking about, trying to get back now in front of Roger Christensen and closing the margin up to the likes of Nicholas Matteo and some of the others that have really been through the wars today, Paul. We knew it was going to be a tricky race. We knew that the way this track sort of played itself out was going to lead to contact. Can you imagine what it would have been like if we had rain?
That would have been a whole other level of carnage. We saw how the drivers struggled with Okayama. Granted, that was a biblical amount of rain that fell that day. And I don't think we'll see that level of rain in another Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup race, he says, and the series administrators making note of, all right, we'll show you, Paul. We'll show you what you know. But there you see those live point standings, and again, still, Jasir and Pai separated by that 20 points. That's big. That is really big between those two right now as we're heading in towards that last week of the championship. There you see Beckham Jasir ahead of Elliot Veyron. Veyron's one of those drivers who wants to keep on moving up just to help with those points here. In 10th place now, but Beckham Jasir, it's easier said than done to overtake him.
He's also been struggling to pass on occasion as well as Beckham Jasir, right? So he's probably now learned how it's like to be frustrated and where you want to place your car. And so let's see what will happen. Elliot Veyron, by the way, coming off his very first podium in a iRacing Pro Series event on Thursday, and it didn't come on a road course for someone with road experience in the real world, and he'll take that to the inside, slides his way past Beckham Jasir, who can't get the cut back to the inside. The Kwan number 9 into 9th.
Jasir almost looked resigned to that, didn't he? But we happened to be on board and on his webcam there, just almost seemed resigned to that move being made. I'm just looking at the lap times, and yeah, Jasir's been about just there or thereabouts, a tenth of a second per lap slower than Elliot Veyron in front now. So just not quite having that pace, but as I say, it is literally just a tenth of a second here and there difference between these drivers. It is the smallest of, well, it's not the smallest of margin, but it's a minute margin, isn't it, between these drivers out there today?
The margins in qualifying were actually bigger than I thought kind of thought they were going to be. But once we got into the race, you're right. We've seen some drivers kind of slip off the back, but that's been contact, enabled. Also, just the battling enable some of the gaps that we've seen as well. So that rhythm, it's often what we see, right? And as long as you don't stray out of it, and for example, put yourself into the gravel like Veyron did for a second there, you blink and you lose a tenth, right? You lose 1,000, and that's a couple of positions in a championship like this, Paul. It's a story to be said of any iRacing Pro Series, to be fair, and that's why you and I are not in the Pro Series, at least racing. That's why we commentate on them instead.
So what you're saying is we need to stick to the Contender Series. Not the Contender Series, the All-Stars, sorry. I mean,
Nordschleife next year, I'm down. I'll be an All-Star again if Porsche really wants me to.
I mean, we've both had All-Star experience, so yeah, absolutely, we'd be up to that. Although I don't think we'd want to be talking to you around the Nordschleife. There's the top half of Florian Lebigra's head. I think his webcam has actually been moved during this broadcast just from the forces that go through the wheels. You've got to remember, if you've mounted that to your sim rig, that camera, the strongest of mounts, there's a lot of vibration goes through those rigs, especially with these direct drive wheels that all these pro drivers run.
Yeah, but we always see the forehead of Florian, to be fair. That seems to be its natural state. So maybe he corrected it for us, and now it's naturally been shaken back to the place where it's most comfortable. So there's some drivers with which that is a frequent occurrence. Jose Soria as well in particular. Front four have really started to pull away, and that's something that's just important to think about, because 10-lap race versus 20-lap race, balance of the car does change quite considerably. How much you can use the tires. It does seem as though Coanda looked quite comfortable. I'm not saying Florian Lebiger is looking uncomfortable by any means, but look at how he was just passed by Daniel Pastor. Doesn't seem as though he's got as much ease and confidence with what the car's giving him as compared to those around him.
Pastor, the Williams Esports driver, up 12 places in this race compared to Lebiger's 9, Matti Sipola's 9. Some big moves in this race. Oscar Pye's up 8 places as well. So there's been some big changes, and certainly been intriguing to watch this one. Mitchell de Jong's been slowly working his way back through. He's now to 16th after dropping further down, and he's the one who's next in the sights of Daniel Pastor. Now, is that a case of Bobby Zelensky? Well, I don't know, because Mitchell de Jong's been overtaken by Bobby Zelensky. Zelensky's, fair to say, he's out of contention for qualification. Mitchell de Jong's in a comfortable place right now. I mean, really, it should be a case of just hold position for these two, but no, Mitchell's going for it.
I think Bobby, you were saying earlier, he's had a nightmare of a Contender Series. I think Bobby's just trying to get out of the season and not hold up his teammates, because again, at the end of the day, let's say Mitchell has a bit of a nightmare next week. He gets involved in a bunch of incidents, suddenly loses 100 points. You know, that is worst case scenario. It's not going to happen. But that's what Mitchell's probably thinking about, right? Every point is something you've got to fight for. And we know Mitchell, right? He is someone that, as much as he's a nice guy, one of the nicest people in sim racing, there's a feisty competitor behind the wheel as well, and he will push all the way to the checkered flag.
I still always contend that Jamie Fluke is the nicest guy in sim racing.
Not anymore. But he started to crash into too many people. Sorry, Jamie.
He's the nicest guy to me, that is for sure.
It's just funny because I've talked to him about us calling him the nicest guy in sim racing, and sometimes it's like, it drives him to be less nice.
Yeah, I wish you wouldn't say that, guys. But yeah, certainly Mitchell is up there though. But he's one of those characters, is Mitchell. And I always compare it to when I used to be involved in rugby. I used to play rugby. One of my teammates, nicest guy ever. He would do anything for anyone, wouldn't hurt a fly. But as soon as he crossed that white line onto that rugby pitch, he was an animal. An absolute animal who'd rip your head off if he had half a chance. And it's those people who are able to switch that on and be ultra competitive. They're the people who really surprise people, but do well in competitions like this.
And I think Mitchell as well, I like how you describe him as the rugby player, because the thing that I love about rugby is, for the most part, the respect shown to the referees, right? And because Mitchell is also like that, so respectful, even in those high-pressure situations when having difficult conversations. Whereas footballers, that is soccer for those that live in America, let's be honest, they surround the referee, they shout at him, they try and abuse him, blah, 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 and then they get upset when they get yellow carded for abusing the referee. No, no, no. Mitchell's the opposite. More people need to be like Mitchell and Jamie. That's what we're saying. Take their advice. Don't take it from me, as Daniel Pastor slides up the inside.
Oh, he's trying to make that move on Bobby Zelensky, but Zelensky holds it around the outside, and this is giving Florian Lebiger the opportunity now to get the run in towards turn number 1 on Pastor. No move being made though, so it's still as they were. It is Bobby Zelensky 16th, Daniel Pastor 17th, Florian Lebiger 18th, Matti Sipola up 9 places as well from the back of the grid in 19th place. Remember, points all the way down to 25th, and Daniel Pastor right now 17th in the live standings. If he can move forward another place or two, that'll put him in that box 16th place, that box seat of 16th, to give him the hope of being the first one to maybe cash in on somebody choosing not to compete next year from the 15 that do have the opportunity to automatically compete next year.
Haven't brought that up today, Paul. It's a very good point. Even though the top 15 are the ones that are assumed to rise to the Super Cup, there is the chance for those behind to A, be invited if any of the top 15 for whatever reason do not choose to move up, or if any of those Super Cup drivers from last year elect not to return. So you're fighting there as well. So it could come down to 1 point between the two of those drivers as to who makes it into next year's Super Cup. The margin behind them is a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
You can expect them to fight all the way to the very end.
Yeah, they certainly will, and they should do as well. Here you see Daniel Pashtor, a fan of the big gloves. He likes the longer gloves, as down the inside into one, contact with Zelensky, into the door panel, bang, and through he goes. Zelensky's not giving this one up without a fight. A little bit of a squeeze between the two of them, but Pashtor finally makes that move stick. It was rough, it was aggressive, but he made it work.
You can tell we're at the end of the race as well, because I think they're all cognizant of how close to the incident limit that they are. They've been beating against each other, they've been pushing each other off the track, and we did see two drivers get incident point penalties in the sprint race. And so these drivers are all in the points once again, like Paul said, top 25. They don't want to slip up and find themselves dropping back in these closing stages, and so they have to leave that extra half a car's width. And that doesn't seem like a lot, but Paul, you think about this final sector, for example, right? How wide this penultimate corner really is, how uphill that climb through the final corner really is. If you're offline by half a car's width, it can really compromise you. What's Labiru going to do as in front of him he sees the opportunity by Zelensky running wide?
Yeah, right as you were mentioning it, Bobby Zelensky out into the gravel trap. Compromises his run, and Zelensky going defensive into turn number one. He's seen what happens if you leave the gap there, and Labigra right now keeping focused, keeping the pressure on right now. He'd love to make up another place just to guarantee himself that position in the championship. But Pashtor, Daniel Pashtor, 29th to 16th, that's 13 places gained in this race. He's one spot away from me saying that he's had a heck of a drive, but I'm saying it anyway. He has had a heck of a drive, especially even with a mistake in losing places.
It's the mindset that sometimes at this level you need to see, right? Because there's only ever going to be one winner in a field of 30 in this Porsche Contender Series. That's just the way motorsports works. It's not like the Premier League where there's 20 teams and on any given Sunday, if they're all playing, 10 of them can win. No, only one gets to walk away a winner here. And so, Paul, whatever result you get from a race, you've got to try and take the positives from it. And I think there's plenty of positives to take there and some confidence to build heading off to Spa.
As out the final corner, one of those Coanda cars running wide in front of these drivers right now. That was as we're going to turn number one. In fact, it wasn't the Coanda car, sorry. It was Pashtor, who's trying to charge down on Mitchell de Jong on that final lap, but he's too far back now, I feel, to gain any more places. Well, drivers that we've barely talked about all race are up at the front here. It's the quartet. It's Rankin, Sonnen, Warren and Rogers. And for Sonnen and for Rankin, this has been a big week for them.
It's the week they wanted, right? The building block, the week that takes them to Spa with less worries on their back. They can now start thinking about 2025 and maybe no longer being contenders, now being part of the Porsche Esports Supercup Elite.
As we go through the final corner, Elvis Rankin can see the checkered flag. Oh, big slide through the final corner, but he sees the checkered flag and is a race winner here in the main race, the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup Contender Series at the Sachsenring. Julian Sonnen in second ahead of Dane Warren. Good week for Dane in the end. Two third places for him. That's a big result for him. Across the line, they still come. Foreign Abiga, big recovery drive from him. Daniel Pashtor, a big drive from him. Bobby Zelensky ended up with a black flag on the last lap, so we'll wait for the last car to cross the line before being able to give you the full provisional results. But yeah, big day and Chunye Zhang is the last driver to cross the line there. Let's take you through your provisional race results then for this week number 5 main race. It's Elvis Rankin leading a Contender Esports quartet. Himself just under a second ahead of Julian Cernan, who was just over a second ahead of Dane Warren, who had Josh Rogers not that far behind him, his fellow Australian. Moreno Sarica, really good week for Moreno after finishing second in the sprint race, 5th here in the main race. Good result for him. Carlos Fenalosa 6th ahead of Xander Reed, Tristan Iglesias, Elliot Veyron, and Beckham Jasir rounds out the top 10. William Chadwick dropping down the order into 11th after being involved in an incident on lap 1. Oscar Pai and Michael Jarney. Pai making 8 places up in this race ahead of his teammate. Simone Maria Marchena made gains in that one as well, up to 14th ahead of Mitchell de Jong. Daniel Pastor, the biggest mover, up 13 places ahead of Lebigra and Sipler, who both made up 10 places in that race. Really good drive for those 3. Leo Garibaldi in 19th place ahead of Bryn Collins, rounding out the top 20. 21st for Andrew Caron ahead of Pascal Costa. And it's Nicholas Mateo, Rafael Silva, and Roger Christensen is the last of the point scorers here today. The rest of them outside of the points. Luis Belike, Chunye Zhang, and Bobby Zelensky with that black flag on the final lap drops him down to 28th. Daniel Savini, after that lap 1 incident, all the way down to last place. Well, there we go. That is how things have gone here in this main race. The big talking points, of course, is Cernan, Warren, and Rankin getting some really good results for them. I'd say the biggest winner of this week, though, for myself, is Moreno Sarica.
The confidence, right, after doing well in qualifying, then carried forward into the race, staying out of all that trouble. Oh, he's put himself in a great position, and a driver that's got experience of that Super Cup as well, right? I think I agree with you, Paul. I think big losers in many ways. You've got to say the likes of Bryn Collins, they're going to be feeling a little bit downbeat from this week, right? Knowing that this was maybe a week where they could put themselves into a position to challenge, not going to be able to say that heading into Spa.
Yeah, certainly these drivers will be looking to Spa and just praying for anything really to help them out in that one. We are waiting for a couple of driver interviews for you all to be able to hear from those drivers who did well in this main race. But the big loser, I feel, this week was Daniel Pastor. Is certainly going to be kicking himself out of all of that. But we do get to hear from one of our drivers here, and he's going to be standing by with Arjuna Kankapati. It's Dane Warren.
Pair of third-place finishes for Dane Warren as well, so gets him, I think, relatively comfortably, I think, into the top 10 potentially. But Dane, how are you feeling? It's been a, let's be honest, up and down season. A couple of mistakes leading in the last couple of weeks as well. How are you feeling overall, though? The pace has been there, and now you're finally starting to see the results as well.
Yeah, you can say that again. It's been a really rough start. Yeah, not really from a lack of pace, just from a lack of executing and qualifying mainly. Which I'm pretty happy to say has been pretty good to us the last 2 rounds, which is a nice turnaround. But man, I am shocking in the race at the moment. It is not a pretty sight. But yeah, look, to get a podium in a feature and some good points on the board is you know all I can ask for at the moment.
I'm glad you said it, because you won't be so angry with maybe some of the things that I said about your lack of mental focus in that particular race. But let's talk about now, right, the fact that you've been able to kind of get this result back on iRacing a little bit more. How are you feeling with the balance of the car and how things have been going? We're heading off to Spa. You know, Contender Series is almost done and dusted. Do you feel like you're finally getting that rhythm back together?
I think in qualifying for sure, but to be honest, the race is just from a lack of driving the car for more than, you know, like 5 or 10 laps. That's completely on me. You know, it's just coming from the other game that we spent so much of our time on. The driving style is so different. Like, you're from the start, you're under driving the entire race, and it's just such an alien thing for me at the moment. So yeah, I mean, it's just small steps at a time. Like, the qualifying is there, and in that series at the moment, or in this series at the moment, it's yeah, all you really need. You just qualify up the front and kind of stay there, unfortunately. But yeah, Spa should be nice. I don't hate Spa. I actually haven't driven the rescan yet, so that's another story. So yeah, we'll see how we go.
We'll learn a bit more about it next week. Thanks for the chat, Dane, and see you at Spa.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate the honesty from Dane Warren there to say that, yeah, the race execution has maybe not been there. We'll stick, though, with plenty of Command Esports drivers who finished on the podium today. Julian Sonnen grabs second spot. Julian, talk to us about your day here today. Seems like, from your perspective, exactly what you needed. 13th in the championship coming into today, top 10 leaving the day.
Yeah, exactly. It's been a few tough rounds. Quality was an issue at the beginning of the season, and then I managed to turn it around as long as the rounds go. But I've been a bit unlucky, then a few mistakes from my side, so couldn't bring good points home. But no, it's done. It's been a long time. I haven't had a podium in any best series as well, so it's really good.
What was it like in that sprint race? Paul and I were kind of wondering, you know, you've got drivers in front of you that are pretty comfortable in terms of points. Are you guys thinking about that feature race, the invert, and the points that are out for grabs in the feature race? Because there's one thing we've been talking about a lot this season. There are more points, of course, available in the feature race. So do you want to finish better in the feature race or finish better in the sprint race?
Yeah, sure. It's something you think about as a driver when you're in the race. You think about where you're gonna start in the feature race, especially on a track like this where overtaking is very difficult. I've had experience in the past where I've try to not to go back, but let's say not fight the positions too much and tell myself I'm gonna have a better starting position, and then I get crashed, and so I had no points in the feature. So you always want to have some points on the board in the sprint race as well, but definitely you think about starting up front in the feature, that's for sure.
Well, one more week to go, Julian, and we'll see you from Spa. Thanks for the chat, and best of luck for the preparation that lies ahead.
Thank you very much.
And one more chat. Elvis Rankin rejoins the field after missing last week at Zolder, and after 2 wins earlier this season, make it 3 now in the Contender Series. Elvis, how are you feeling after qualifying maybe a little bit more down the field than you would have wanted, but fought your way exactly where you needed to be in the sprint to take advantage in the feature? Oh, and now he's muted.
I feel like I did that twice now this season, so...
Probably.
Yeah, so I don't know, like the quali lap, I honestly, like I turned in for sector 2 and I had big Laguna flashbacks, so I off-tracked the quali lap there and I was on for a pole lap. I felt like my sector 1 was good, but I just turned in and I just thought, like, don't off-track, and that's not something that you want to think on your quali lap at all. So the rest of the lap just didn't really come together, so I had to start a little bit deeper in the field than I would have liked, but had a good lap 1 with lap 1, lap 2 to kind of get up into that top 8 reverse, and then yeah, just kind of in the feature. I got a little worried in turn 1 on lap of the feature. I thought that I thought that Josh and Carlos were gonna come into me, so I went a little bit wide. But other than that, maybe a couple moments here and there. But I felt like it was a pretty smooth feature race, much smoother than the win earlier at Portimao. So everyone at the Contender Esports has been absolutely lights out in this championship, and yeah, I'm very happy to be a part of this team and show that we're really have a good package.
And so what's the goal for next week? Of course, now you're pretty comfortable, I think, in terms of the points. Surely it's going to be to add a 4th, maybe a 5th win to your Contender Series CV, if you will?
Obviously, I mean, the goal is obviously to win, right? So I think that just going to go out, do the best that I can, and then have some fun at Spa. I think it'll be a fun race with the draft, and you're just looking to have some fun.
Just no Laguna flashbacks in qualifying, it would seem.
Yeah.
Elvis Rankin joins us after a win in the feature race. And Paul, 3 Coanda drivers to talk about. They had 12 coming into the season. We knew just how strong their package was going to be, but definitely does seem like they're feeling strong heading into the off-season that lies ahead.
Yeah, strength in numbers, isn't it? That's for sure. And it even just adds up into the practice, what you can learn collectively compared to those that have been doing it on their own, like Florian Lebigra, for example. Really difficult for them to be able to get that. But we've got one more week to go here, Arjuna, and it's at Spa-Francorchamps on the new rescan. A little bit different with the track limits as well. You've got gravel in places where previously we didn't have. Drivers are going to have to adapt to those changes, but overall, everybody knows this track.
Everyone knows the track, but those changes make it so different, right? Think turn 1, you see it visually there, that gravel. You used to be able to run all the way wide. Yes, you get an incident point, but now you'll slow your car down. And it means you slow all the way up towards the top of the Camel and the run towards Les Combes, right? So the nuances on this track are going to be interesting. Dane Warren said he's never driven the new iRacing scan of it, which means he doesn't know where all the new bumps are. He doesn't know where all the things have changed. And I think that's going to be something all these drivers will be front of their mind heading into next week.
Yeah, so make sure you join us in 1 week's time, same place. We'd like to thank you all for joining us here. From myself, Paul Smith, Arjuna Kankipati, and Hugo Luis behind the scenes on production. In 1 week's time, we get to know who are finishing in the top 15 in the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup Contender Series. Make sure you join for us. Goodbye.